Okay, so I am delighted to present to you Mr. Daryl Savage, who is a district manager for American Family Insurance in the Chicagoland area. And he's been in the insurance and financial services industry for over 28 years. He has worked as an insurance agent, a sales consultant, and a financial planner. Daryl is a graduate of the University of Southern California with a Bachelor of Arts degree in broadcast journalism. Early in his career, he worked as a copywriter, a television news reporter, and a weekend anchor. He worked at CBS stations in LA, Texas, and Minnesota before moving to Illinois. He also worked closely with some well-known journalists like Connie Chung, Ann Curry, and Lester Holt at the local level before they all became national news anchors. And he and Chicago meteorologist Mark Strell even started their careers together. Much of his time on the air, he specialized as an education beat reporter. Still today, he maintains his connection to the academic world as an occasional panelist for Roosevelt University events, which we really do appreciate, Daryl. You're very committed, and has been helping students and journalists with their career preparation, such as resumes, mock interviews, and audition tests. So just to get started, I'm Center for Wonder Development at Roosevelt University. And I just want to go over kind of the agenda for this workshop. First, we're going to talk a little bit about what to expect at the fair, and then how to prepare for the virtual career fair, what you should be doing at the virtual career fair, after the fair, and then I'll be taking you through the student version of Handshake and showing you, if you haven't used it before, how you sign into it, how do you register for the fair, how do you upload your resume, all that very fun and exciting stuff. And then at the end, of course, we're going to leave time for questions and answers. So just to give you a little bit of a wider view of what you should be expecting at the career fair. There are employers there who are going to offer two different types of opportunities to meet with them, either a large group session or a one-on-one session. If it's a group session, you may or may not have an opportunity to talk with them. They decide whether or not they want you to be able to share your camera or speak, or if you are just going to put in questions in the chat. In the individual one-on-one sessions, those are very quick, 10-minute sessions. It's almost like speed dating in a way. So, you want to be concise, you want to be quick, you want to get to the point. And when you are in these one-on-one sessions, it's expected that you use your camera. So you want to make sure that your camera's ready, everything is good to go with your technology. And Handshake has a system set up so that as the 10 minutes is coming up, it's going to give you a 1-minute warning, both for the recruiter and yourself. And then that way you have that cue to start wrapping up. And this is the first time we're using this system, but my understanding is that it's going to automatically kick both of you out. And it's going to be time with the next session. During, we already talked about that. During the individual sessions, it's expected that you have your camera on. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Daryl, who's going to talk to you about Before the Fair.
Well, good afternoon, Jennifer. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks for being here.
Well, it's fun to connect and talk about a step that really can be one of the most important in your careers, and that's getting started. And you only get one chance to make that first impression. It's an overused term, but the reality is it is so important because it is so true. So no matter which social media or technology resources that you're going to use, you want to make sure that you update your profile, who you are, because chances are interviewers and companies will look at that. And so you want to put your best foot forward. You want to make sure it's professional. And if you can go in and do some pre-work, find out about, learn a little bit more about that interviewer and that company if you can. That's going to go a long way. I tell you, I really take note of that to see that somebody has gone above and beyond to know about the company. There's nothing that's more of a turnoff than somebody who at the time I would say, do you have any questions for me? Well, yes, tell me about your company, or what do you do? Well, that's probably not the sort of question that you want to ask. It's a good idea to know more about them, because the bottom line is you want to be able to integrate what you know about yourself into why you'd be a good fit there. So one of the most important things, yes, it's nice to find out about that other company, but it's to know how you can connect with them, how you can be an asset. I call that an elevator speech. One of the things that you want to do is focus on the specific things that you think tell your story in relationship to how you can demonstrate your strengths and be an asset to them. And one of the things I think, Jennifer, that's pretty important is, so when you practice it with somebody who maybe doesn't know that company or isn't as familiar with your story, because you want somebody to really be able to dig into, wait, you didn't explain that very clearly. I didn't understand that. So if you're talking to somebody who's an expert in it, they may not be able to catch that. So I think that's important, and one thing I wanted to emphasize.
That's a great suggestion. And I just want to add on to that, that in the Office of Career Development, one of our most underutilized services is our mock interviews. So what we will do is, if you as a student or alumnus send us a job posting of a position that you're really interested in, we'll do a practice interview with you, and we'll give you constructive, helpful feedback in a safe setting and help you practice for that. So know that you can do that with us, but if you can do it with a friend or another colleague, definitely you want to make sure you're practicing.
And in that practice, one of the reasons that this is called an elevator speech is the fact that it's supposed to be pretty quick. It's supposed to be pretty fast. And quite frankly, when Jennifer was talking about those speed dating one-on-one 10-minute interviews, you have to get used to telling your story quickly. If your first answer takes 7 minutes, well, there's not much time left. And another thing that's important is how your resume grabs the eye of the person who's going to be looking at it. Make sure it's updated, have somebody else look at it. Again, we've all been in a situation where you can look at the same mistake that you've made or the same typo a dozen times and never see it, and somebody else can see it immediately. So it is really important to utilize somebody else's eyes. That's something I still do professionally. I have my peers look at mine, I look at theirs. It's not a matter of intelligence. It's not just saying that someone's not competent. It's the fact that our eyes play tricks on us and we can see the same mistake over and over and not catch it. So it's good to have another set of eyes. And take advantage of the career development department. When you can have a review, do that. Some of your competitors for a position may not have it. So you definitely want to separate yourself. And to make sure that you go through the process of uploading the resume, you want to be as updated in what you're looking for and who you are as possible. I cannot tell you how many times people have said, oh yeah, but I've done this, I just didn't update that, or I didn't put it on there. Well, what's the interviewer supposed to do? Handwrite it and then make a note in their system that the resume that's been downloaded is not really accurate because it actually has more information. That's not going to help you a lot. So make sure you do look at it, because chances are you have a greater and better story to tell with newer things to put on there. So don't miss that opportunity. And I know that I'm not the expert in telling you how to update that. So Jennifer, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so if you would like to send us your resume to our department email account at career@roosevelt.edu, it's helpful if you do it in a Word version, so that if there's something little, we can help you fix that and then send it back to you. And then in terms of uploading it to your Handshake account, we are going to walk you through that towards the end of this webinar. The other thing that I was going to say is that I just want to reiterate what Daryl said about, throughout your career, when you're updating your resume, you should always have someone else look at it, because just like he said, our eyes see what we want to see. The other part I want to emphasize is that, we get used to using our own jargon. And like in my profession, we have acronyms that we many things. And you could be applying to a job and interviewing with someone who's not familiar with all these different acronyms. So you want to make sure you're also writing it so that people really do truly understand what it is that you have accomplished and contributed in your previous roles or organizations.
And one of the good things about making sure you update that prior to any interview that you have is because then maybe that interviewer is going to find something special or unique that he or she can ask you about in the interview that can separate you. So it's great to have it in their hands before you sit down with them, if you get the opportunity. And making sure, of course, the profile that you put together is accurate, updated as well. That can be part of your appeal. That can determine whether or not somebody does make the decision to interview you or not. Not talking specifically about a Roosevelt career fair. I'm talking about in general. That profile can be how you represent yourself on social media. It can be a cover letter. It can be something that is going to tell your story, and somebody can decide whether or not they're going to interview you based on that. Make sure you get your space ready. All around you, you want to make sure that you're prepared with your notebook, paper, and something to write. Water, if you want to have that, not milk, which is something that is going to make it so you're not going to be speaking the way you want to. So little things like that. And I have been in situations where I've had a presentation, didn't have water, and an hour into it, I'm realizing what a mistake that is. So you also want to have it be interruption free. We know we love our pets. The person on the other side of the Zoom camera may not necessarily be as fond of cats and dogs and other distractions as we are. And to let others know what you're doing, like roommates, this would be an important time to say, hey, I'm going to be in an interview for the next half hour. So can you make sure you're the one who gets the doorbell, or can you try to keep the dog from barking, whatever it is? Because if we don't, inevitably, that's when they're breaking through saying, hey, can you do me a favor? And you just don't want to be in a position to do that. So as much heads up as you can give them, it's important. The background is critical, because there can be something that's behind you that can catch the eye of somebody because it's disturbing, it's funny, it's hard to see what it is. And one of the reasons it's important is because how many times have you looked at somebody and you can hardly hear what they're saying, because the whole time you're trying to figure out what that thing, what is that back there? And as a result, good, bad, or otherwise, it just becomes a distraction. So to eliminate things that are going to create any sort of reason for the interviewer to be paying attention to something else other than you. And they can be distracting. And again, 10 minutes, you don't have a lot of time to have distraction. You want all the focus on you.
And I've never had a pet interrupt my meetings. I'm being facetious. I have a cat that likes to always interrupt my meetings. Okay, moving on with before the fair still.
Okay. I love this picture. You want to check the connection. That never stops. Jennifer and I, before this started today, got on early, and we were having internet challenges and had to get off and get back on. Technology will bite you if you don't give yourself the time. We've all been there where, yeah, that same link, it's worked over and over for the past week, but this is the time you get on the last second, and that's when there's an issue. So you don't want to start by saying, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think it was going to take me so long, and now you've got 5 minutes. So you don't want to do that to yourself. We talked a little bit about the background as well as other things that can be a distraction. The lighting is very important, and we'll see a picture of that later too. But know that the goal is for them to see your face. It's not to accent what's behind you and for you to sit there in darkness, but rather to make it so they can see your expressions and your engagement. One thing that I learned well into my professional career is to disable Outlook pop-ups, because I know myself. And if you have email and then you have pop-ups, I would catch myself just looking at them. As much as you try not to do it, they can be a distraction. So to disable things like that, that will in any way take away from the conversation and you being there is really, really important. And that can be visual, it can be sound, not having your phone sitting right next to you and you just keep hearing the dings and the bells that we all recognize. And one of the other things too is making sure that the camera angle is flattering. Those who professionally would say what to do will often say, if you can have the camera higher, that's a good thing rather than shooting up. And so whether you have a desk that can raise or you can put a box or something just to make it higher, it's one of those things that it just looks better than seeing the bottom of your neck and the ceiling behind you. And I know that Jennifer, you and I have talked about that. That's an important thing for you too, as well, when it comes to visually how you look.
Exactly. Just a couple more things. I just wanted to say that, you know, you can do everything right, and then at the last minute, technology fails you. And I think a lot of people are understanding of that. But what I'd say is if this happens to you while you're at the virtual career fair, like if you go to log on with your one-on-one session with an employer and you can't connect, those 10 minutes can go by really quick, right? You could basically, the employer might think you're no-showing when really the issue is that you're having problems with technology. When your technology does become available, please reach out to us. There may even be an opportunity for you to reschedule later that afternoon with that company because they could have another slot available. Just to make sure you aren't counted as a no-show. You don't want to give a bad impression to the employer. And we did have a very good question come up. Someone has asked, is a Zoom background filter acceptable during an interview? What are your thoughts, Daryl?
I think it certainly is, as long as it's an appropriate background to the situation. For example, if it is a professional background of sorts, if it's something that's pretty neutral, a background of you whitewater rafting, for example, may not be appropriate, as pretty as it is, because it may be a distraction and may not have anything to do with that. So I would say to make it something that is something that would help you to talk about. I've seen people have their families back there. Now that's a good conversation piece in some ways. Was it really a part of your interview? Maybe not. So I would say look at what it is that you want to portray. And if you do use a background, to make sure that it's working for you. Some don't work so well. I don't really like the moving pictures that people will have. There's one that is going around with the northern lights that are constantly flickering. I think that's an example of a distraction. And so when we talk about the things to do at the fair, dressing to impress is something that is important. You want to make sure that you're definitely doing what you want to be prepared for that. And it is something that people don't automatically do. I think about the fact that I've had somebody in a wrinkled t-shirt before, and that's kind of crazy to think that someone would do it, but that's what we see as interviewers and employers from time to time. Another thing I think is real important is you can see our names, Jennifer and my name, as a part of our Zoom screen. Make sure it is you and it's appropriate. I've also seen people who have their brothers or sisters or their parents' names on it, or a nickname that isn't really appropriate. So, you can go in and you can change it. There's 3 dots and you can click on those to have the control to rename if you need to correct the name. And I would say doing that is important. And positive body language, not slouching, not looking bored just based on how you're sitting. To be engaged and active in the interview is really, really important. Leaning forward as opposed to leaning back looking at the camera when you're speaking, and not at the other person. If, especially, some of you may have set up a different monitor that's right next to your laptop or a phone. And we've seen people who are working on it, and it may be appropriate because you look like you're looking at the person there, but know that they're seeing you from this angle, and that could be something that looks kind of strange too. And when you can smile as much as you can, and there's great examples of that at the bottom, where if the camera's at the wrong angle, if we're concentrating, well, we can have resting B face. And that is something that really comes across when we don't smile. Our faces are made to smile. When we don't, it does stand out. It makes a big difference, especially that first impression. And there are some things that we don't recognize, like clicking a pen, shuffling paper, having things that rustle that don't really sound that loud to you as the person who's doing it, but for the person who's listening, that might be the only thing they hear. Your thoughts on that, Jennifer, if you felt that as well?
Oh, yes. And that's why we recommend that you do a mock interview, because those are some of the things that, we help you pick up on. And if you can record it even, it's really eye-opening sometimes when you go back and you watch yourself and you think, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I was doing these behaviors. So it's just a good thing to practice. The other thing I want to point out, yes, if you're like me and sometimes you suffer from resting bad face, we're going to call it, force yourself, just force yourself to smile. Sometimes I can be really serious, and when I'm serious or thinking, it looks like I'm mad, and I'm not mad. I'm just thinking. So make sure you're smiling. And then in this photo that we used for this session, Daryl and I talked about this, and we both agree that we give her a fail for her background, because it looks like she's sitting right in front of a window and it's really bright, and it does look like she has blinds there. And it's kind of hard on the eyes, like for the viewer to look at. So we would recommend that she close her blinds so that's not a distraction to the interviewer.
And one of the things I did not allude to, and maybe it's one of the most important, have you ever been on a call and somebody was eating pretzels or chips? Oh, you never forget that. It is so loud. And it's obvious when people continue to chew and they think they're quiet, think they're so slick. Don't take that risk. Don't take that risk. All right. And as we move forward too, when I think about not only at the fair, is success transitioning to what happens when you're sitting in front of people, it's before you get there and it's during the fair. So logging on early, which you could in your mind call that before, you can call it at the time of. I call it at the time of the fair. You just have to get on early, because if you don't, it could be something as innocent as the host just being overwhelmed and they're rushed at the very beginning, and then they're just not admitting people the way that they should. But more likely it's the stress that we can create for ourselves by not being ready because we're running in at the last second. And get to know where your camera specifically is on your phone or your laptop or your iPad. A different place for all of them. Some of them it's the top right in the middle, some of them it's the side, but that can really be the thing that shows whether or not you're looking at the person you're talking to. So it's pretty important. And while it's important to take notes, sometimes I think it is also important to let them know that you're taking notes, because if your pad's way to the side, and it can look like, again, you're looking off camera. And when it comes to building a relationship, many of us have heard the most important thing that you can say to get someone's attention is their name. So get the name of the interviewer, have a conversation with them. That's one of those things that becomes glaringly obvious. If you don't, and at the end, you get ready to say thank you and their name, and you realize that you don't know it. And it's pretty clear when that happens. So, and one of the things we started with is what the virtual career fair is going to be like next week. Oh, short, concise answers, and to make sure the interviewer knows that you can expand on anything that they would like to have further information on, but to give them the choice of asking about that rather than one magnificent long answer at the beginning, which means that you can't talk about 3 or 4 things really important to your story. So don't cut yourself off in that way by not giving yourself enough time to tell your story. And whether it's a resume that you are talking about, whether it's some things you've done in the past and they ask a question or you take notes, oh, please don't read it. Use it in a bullet form and paraphrase and tell a story, because nobody wants to hear what you did by looking at the top of your head while you're reading. It becomes very, very obvious. And I think one of the things that we sometimes forget, the answers should be about what you're going to bring to that organization, not the fact that, well, this would be a great company for me because it's in the right place, and I really like comics, so I really want to be an artist. Great. That just doesn't really help the interviewer. So think about something like, with the experience I have here, I had an internship working and in my neighborhood as I grew up, this is what I learned to do. And that's something that would translate to helping your organization. And this is why. I think of every answer that you give as something to tell your story about how you can help that organization. Your thoughts about that, Jennifer?
I wholeheartedly agree. Great response. Great response. Let's see if I can get this to move forward here. Talking about technical difficulties. There we go.
Also, when the fair has come to an end, that may be where the real competition begins. How do you stay in contact with that person who interviewed you? How do you continue to be a continuous learner about that organization? How do you share that? How do you get in touch with them? It can be something as simple as, how would you prefer for me to reach out with you? Would you rather have me call you? Would you prefer an email? I would say don't assume, just because some people may be terrible at getting to their messages. They will get right to email immediately, or vice versa. So let them tell you how they'd like for you to reach out with them. I think it's always a great idea to connect on LinkedIn if they're interested or willing to do that. And the reason is then you get a chance to know more their network. They will, of course, get a chance to know more about you. And that's the important thing. So I think it's probably obvious for me to say that needs to be professional. That's not necessarily where you're going to put things that aren't necessarily appropriate or wouldn't put you in a good light. If you do that, then certainly that's not going to be beneficial to you to connect with somebody on LinkedIn or whatever social media that you would be contacting them on. So make sure you have your nose is clean before you invite somebody to see what everything looks like in your world. Following
And Gerald,
that,
can I
yes.
ask you really quickly, as someone who hires folks, do you look at candidates' LinkedIn profiles?
Absolutely. I like to see what their history is. I like to see the sorts of things that they do to be ongoing learners. I want to see who the people are outside of the resume, based on what they like, the things that they share, the comments that they make. So I think it's a good idea to do that and assume that everything that you put on social media will be seen, period. Just assume. Oh, I didn't think anybody would read that is not going to help you in this day and age. Every day we hear about people getting in trouble because they put something out there and wonder why something bad happens as a result. And I think it's also very, very important to apply for these opportunities only if you're interested. Think about the choices that you made and how you determined which colleges you were going to apply to. Some of us had the reaches, those that were, I think I'll get in, it's a little bit of a stretch, and some that I'll get in for sure. Now, if you think about employers in the same way, let's say you're interviewing with the person who was the for sure, really don't want to be there, but in case I don't get the other job, oh, that just comes flying right out of you in the way that you may be talking to somebody and the way you act. If you're not really interested, do you want to start your career by having an offer and then turning it down after you said you really want to join their company? Be honest with them, be honest with yourself. So I think that's one of the critical things about that first step or an early step, and where it puts you in a career trajectory. You want to be starting in the right direction. And formally do the application. That's not just saying to the interviewer, hey, I'm interested. I'd like to hear more about your company. You want to apply and make sure that you get your name on the list.
Because if you don't apply, you won't be considered.
Absolutely. Don't assume that somebody's going to rush back from their interview with you and tell everybody else, hey, I met this guy or this young lady, amazing. And you don't have to in any way go through the formal process. Absolutely. Read what they ask for. If they ask for certain things, to make sure that's a part of your application. You don't want to start the next step, moving beyond a virtual fair, and now it may be an interview in a company's conference room saying, yeah, I didn't send this because I didn't think I needed to. Well, that's not going to go over very well. Pay close attention to what that application process is in its entirety.
Okay. So navigating Handshake. I'm going to stop sharing this particular screen. And I'm going to go back to a different screen here. Bear with me.
And I would say no matter what school you're at, what company you're working with, they have their different technologies on ways to express yourself, communicate with each other. So become the expert in that as best you can, whatever it is, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it. And here, when understanding how Handshake works is going to determine whether or not you get an interview with somebody, setting things up that's convenient with your schedule and your availability on that virtual career fair time. Get to know it. Don't wait till the day of. Because as an employer, I've made the mistake of thinking, oh, I'll just right before log in. And what happened was that I had a challenge because things shut down at a certain time before the fair, that particular fair started, and that was problematic. So give yourself time if you can.
Let me try a different browser. I hope our website did not go down. While I'm trying to load this, Daryl, looks like Roosevelt's website might be down.
All right, okay.
But while we're waiting, talk about technology struggles. Have you ever hired anyone as a result of recruiting from a virtual career fair?
Absolutely. And the last person I hired was somebody who wore a green and white Roosevelt sweatshirt. So to say, it's somebody who we hired.
They didn't wear this to the virtual interview, did
No, they didn't.
Okay, good.
I'm glad you clarified that. They did not, but they certainly were proud to go to Roosevelt University. And there were 2 or 3 people who I met through a virtual career fair who were very impressive. And I say it all starts with being present. When there are career fairs that are put together, when there are opportunities to learn how to build a better resume, how to interview better, to take advantage of it. So the person I hired was somebody I was really impressed with, because through the interview, I could see her work ethic, her enthusiasm, her readiness for the interview. That made a big impression. So it pays off.
Okay, can you all see my screen? I'm on the website.
We can.
Okay, my little trick is add a flash and then type in. It's going to bring you to our home page. And again, I apologize, my internet connection is unstable today. From our homepage, if you've never logged into Handshake before, this is where you can go to log into Handshake. And I also wanted to point out, right here is a link to our YouTube channel. Someone has put a question in the chat about if they will receive a copy of this webinar. Yes, you will. We will also email the link to the folks who registered but were unable to attend. So if you check out this website, you'll notice we have other recorded workshops on there, such as resume preparation that we did a couple weeks ago. But down here is where we have the login to Handshake. If you're a student, a current student, you're going to log in using your Roosevelt NetID. If you're an alumnus and you have not yet requested an account, you would want to request an account from us, and you can email us at roosevelt.edu and we can walk you through that process.
And this is a great example of just being persistent. Stuff outside of our control is going to happen all the time. So how do you get around things if you need to?
So if you're a student who is currently registered, you would log in by using this blue button here. I had to do a little bit of a workaround since I'm the Handshake administrator behind the scenes. I had to create a fake student email account for myself. So how I'm logging on is not how you're going to log on. So I just want to make that clear because I don't want to confuse everyone. Employers are reaching out to us because they are concerned because folks are not registering for sessions with them. And we do have quite a few students who are registered for the fair who have registered for no sessions. And so we just want to emphasize that in order to fully participate in the fair, you do have to register for either a group session with an employer or, you know, some of the individual sessions with the employer. If you have not yet registered, when you log on, you should come to this screen. And if you scroll down, we have it pinned down here. You should also be able to find it by looking under events. But I'm going to click on this and register myself. It's really simple. So at the top of the screen, you should see this register button. Just click on that. You're registered. What's next? Sign up for your sessions. Okay. I'm going to prefer not to answer these questions. Just so that you know, we do not automatically upload students' work authorization information into the system because, you know, if you're a student who is an international student, a lot of companies will say, well, you know, we can't sponsor, you know, folks who need sponsorship. We don't want to create any situation where it's going to give them information to discourage from interviewing you. So that's why we don't upload it. And frankly, I would advise you to just choose not to answer that information, okay? Because you want to have access to all of those opportunities. So you can see all the different companies, they have their description. They should even have, you should be able to see too, what positions they are interviewing for. But let's pick on LaSalle Network. So you can see with LaSalle, they have several different group sessions here. And then it looks like they only have one open session individual left available. So they've had quite a few students sign up for them, and there's only one slot left. So this is why we are encouraging you to log in right away and set up your schedule, because some of these employers won't have any spots left. And I think we're almost up to 58 or 59 employers. So we've got a lot of good employers coming. So again, you can log on here, take a look at them, see what interests you. I don't know the individual person you're interviewing with, like the recruiter's name. And that's why we're suggesting when you do the interview, you make sure you jot down their name so that you can follow up with them on LinkedIn and then thank them for spending the time talking with you. And then to upload a document, you'd go to your initials, you'd click on Documents. And you can see I have not loaded anything up. So let me select something. We'll pretend that's my resume. So document type, you want to make sure you have it labeled appropriately. So maybe some employers want you to attach a cover letter. You want to make sure, obviously, you label that cover letter. For this, we'll call it resume. Add document. We did have this set so that resumes had to be reviewed prior to going live to your account. And turned off that feature. So there should be nothing that holds up your resume from going to your profile.
And Jennifer, there's a question there, and
I know,
I'll take a stab at it too.
I'm reading it right now. You know, from my perspective, I can see it in terms of my administrator status, but it didn't appear to me. Okay, so right now you can see that it's successfully loaded. If I want to make it visible on my profile, I just click that button. But let's go back. Employers attending, it's 58 employers. Here we go. So when we click on it and open it up, here's where it shows us employment types, full-time, US work authorization is required for this one, and job titles. So they don't, they list the different job titles. They don't have full job descriptions in this venue. They give a description of their company and then the job titles. Some of these employers have posted their positions in Handshake, but not all of them. Sometimes they want you to post directly within their HR system, and I would clarify and ask those questions when you're talking with them. So this particular company, they're recruiting for part-time. We have some that are recruiting for internships, some that are applying for everything. Oh, look at this one accepts OPT and CPT. So they'll work with international students. Wonderful, that's great to see. So yeah, you are able to see what types of positions and job titles that they're recruiting for. There's one other thing I wanted to show you really quickly. I want to make sure we have enough time for other questions. So this will be the last thing I show you. When we tile in Handshake, they're going to be looking at your profile in Handshake. I have not updated mine because mine is just a fake account. But when I go to my profile, you can see it's kind of prompting me to update it. So here's giving me the prompt to upload my resume. You can upload your photo. You'd want to make sure it's a professional looking photo, something like a headshot that you'd have on your LinkedIn profile. You can choose to answer some of these questions if you want. They kind of have it laid out similar to a LinkedIn profile. So if you want to even copy what you have, you can do that as well. The one thing I wanted to point out is your settings for privacy. So everyone should be defaulted to private. So mine is not viewable by employers unless I would apply to one of their positions. And if you go to settings, there's a couple different options. And it describes what these options do. So they recommend this community level privacy, which means it's going to be kind of like LinkedIn, where it's going to be available for any employer on Handshake, any student, any alumni across all colleges and universities. And it's going to allow you to message students and other folks who you have similar experiences and interests with. That's what they recommend. Or you could choose to have it viewable only by employers. So no other students, no other alumni, just any employer. And this should be employers within the Roosevelt network, not employers that maybe we have rejected because we didn't feel they were ethical or legitimate companies. And then again, the private, only going to be the one to see it. Those of us in career development, we're going to be able to see it as well. But basically it's you, us, and then whichever company you apply to. And there's a question that popped up. Someone asked a question about avatars for a photo. No, I would strongly discourage against using an avatar. You want it to be professional looking, but that's a great question. So I'm going to get out of this. And we have Daryl at your disposal. We have 6 minutes left. What questions do folks have for Daryl? Because he does lots of hiring.
And one thing I would say while we wait for a chat too is I'll tell you the person I hired at the last virtual career fair, it was not to a position that was posted, because I connected with that person, I saw a talent, and we actually created a position. So know that there still can be other opportunities, by the way, because people like you enough, they may find one.
And I will add another quick story on that one. We had a position open several years ago, and someone had applied to it, but they'd also applied to another position. This individual interviewed for that other position, and sometimes I'm on the other side, so I didn't see this when I started out, but trust me when I tell you this. Sometimes we have one position to offer, but there's more than one candidate who we wish we could bring on board. So this person applied for another job in another area of the university, and the colleague came to me and said, listen, she mentioned that she applied for your job too. She was so wonderful in this interview. You should interview her. And we did. She was such a great hire. So sometimes, even if you don't get that specific position that you interviewed for, there could be other opportunities too that they will help you network with. So it's always good to keep an open mind and take advantage of those networking opportunities.
That's a
Okay.
good thought there, Jennifer, because I hire to a certain area that I'm responsible for, but I know my enterprise, my larger organization may offer more opportunities. So I may introduce somebody I meet to someone else who would be hiring for a different area. So know that that can happen as well.
We received another question, another good question about the photo. Is it okay to just leave it blank if you don't have a great photo? I would say for your Handshake account, it's not as vital that you have a headshot or a photo, but I would really encourage you to get a headshot for your LinkedIn account. If you don't have one, even if you can, have a friend, get a nice suit jacket or something and just have a smartphone camera, and then just upload it. But you really don't want to have no photo on your LinkedIn profile.
Totally agree.
And you
There's only
don't want
one thing that I would say rather than no photo, that's worse, and that's inappropriate photo. So
yeah,
of course, make sure it is one that you think is appropriate. If not, blank until you can have one as soon as you can get it up there, a good headshot. I totally agree with Jennifer there.
other questions?
I see one about whether or not we'd recommend reputationdefender.com to see
Oh, I
what's
missed
out
that.
there on social media and just in the Q&A area. And I don't know a lot about reputationdefender.com. I would think anything that you can do to make sure there's not something that would be detrimental or shed you in a negative light. It'd be great to know about it. Of course, one way to avoid that is to not put it out in the first place. That's a whole nother level, I suppose.
And I have to say, I'm not familiar with that. So thank you, James, because now I'm going to do some research on that. So thank you for asking us that. Great suggestion. Someone has set up a Google alert on themselves so that they know if your name's mentioned, it comes up. And if you haven't done this already, you should Google yourself, not because you're vain and all that, but you kind of want to see what's pulling up, what is already out there that others can see, because as a hiring manager, usually when I Google something, the first thing that'll pop up will be the person's LinkedIn profile, but then there'll be, other stories and different things that pop up. So you want to make sure, you just kind of want to check and see. And then that way, if you see something that's popping up, scrub your social media accounts, make sure, any inappropriate photos. And by inappropriate, it could be something you know, like drinking a beer or something, you know, you just want to be, you want to have a professional profile as you're starting your professional career. We all drink beer every now and then, right? There, it's not sinful. It's just, you do want to be careful about the image that you're projecting.
And to Jennifer's point, a lot of that never goes away. In the last political cycle, how many people running for office had to defend things that they did 10, 15 years ago that were not appropriate? So just know that there's a good chance it can come back, and being safe with what you put out there is pretty important.
Any other questions? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we're going the wrong way.
Mhm.
So just a reminder that the career fair is scheduled again for Thursday, April from 2 to 5 p.m. We have our recorded webinars on our YouTube site, and I put in the QR code in case you want to take a quick photo of that. We are having some issues getting last week's session up. We are reaching out to our marketing folks to help us with that. And so we hope to get that one as well as today's one posted by tomorrow. And so just a reminder that you can reach, the best way to reach us right now is over email because we're still working remotely. So you can reach us at career@roosevelt.edu. We are checking voice messages though. So if you need to call us, you can reach our voice message for 1-3560. And then please follow us on our social media accounts. LinkedIn at Roosevelt Connect, and then we're also on Facebook and Twitter at RU Career. And so I thank you all for attending today's session. If you do have any follow-up questions about the career fair, we are doing a career fair open hour next Tuesday at noon. We have it on the university calendar. So you can get the link. If not, if you don't already have it, we can reach out to us and we'll make sure that we send it to you. And if you have a quick question, just stop on in during our Zoom hour. And if you have a quick question about, you know, what should I wear, or should I include something or not on my resume, you know, we can help you with that. Any final words, Daryl?
To say that it just begins by getting experience and participating in career fairs, doing interviews, mock as well as real, because you don't want the most important opportunity to be the first one you're really in. To get that experience is really important because you just want to get better, and that's the only way that any of us learn. And just be honest with yourself and with the interviewers about what you want to do and what your strengths are. Remember to focus on the good, the story that only you can tell about yourself, and be positive, because we do feel it and we see it.
Well, on that note, Daryl, thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon. It was very enlightening. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and happy holidays. And thanks for stopping in. Bye.
My pleasure. Thank you.